the illusion of inclusion, the persistence of racism, discrimination, and ethnicity in the 21st century. And he's given us some excellent information dealing with some of the aspects of this as a problem within our institutions. And so, Doctor, let's see if we can pick up and have you to not only continue talking about the illusion, but help us to come around to what we might be able to do dealing with this as an issue.
Okay. Yeah, and as we said on the last segment, I think it's all institutionalized. For instance, one of our other main institutions that make up the social structure of society in which we live in is that of law, government, and politics. So when we think in terms of law, we're thinking about how those within disparities, within low-income areas are disproportionately imprisoned, for instance, than others. Here in the United States, the most developed, highly industrialized, richest country in the world, where we have over 2 million people in prison. Over 200 million in prison.
More than anybody in the world.
More than anyone in the world. I'm sorry, 200 million in prison. I think Russia has 680,000. And we are having, millions of people that are in prison. We need to do something about that. This is one of the problems of the false sense of identity, of how we need to try to bring some solutions to that problem, and it's certainly connected to another institution, that of economics. Economics is connected, of course, to the family. In those low-income areas where you have teenagers having babies, where you're having breakups within the family without parental type of assistance. All of these things are just causal factors that's related to some of the larger problems that we have in the society in which we live in. Although those same people, as we refer to as having this illusion of inclusion, are feeling this certain sense of freedom that moved out of the 60s movement to let them feel, well, I can go in a place, but now we have to work on the educational development, work on both families being there, work on people being motivated, having a desire and attitude about, which we will know, which many of the younger audience will not know about, just the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And in elementary, junior high, high school, preparing them for the universities to be able to cognitively think in a way of learning and being able to then develop themselves for the social structure of society in which we're living in. Those fundamental basic things are still very important for success. And I think everyone could have an opportunity to do that. That's why we started off the entire segment today by saying, look at us. Race is changing. But when we were there, we had to go with thinking that it hadn't changed, that the worst was there, and we developed and improved. So now, every opportunity is there, but we still need to focus on those still basic educational processes that helps you to develop and to prepare for the larger society in which we're living in.
And so in a real, excuse me, in a real sense, each generation has to indeed push forward some of the ideas that we developed after the Civil War, and that generation pushed us a little farther, and now the 60s pushed us farther. And now you're saying that this is the time for a new understanding of where we are and to move forward from that particular perspective. Is that what we're suggesting?
That's exactly what we said. Charles C. McIntyre has a book that's entitled Racializing a Race, Criminalizing a Race. And in there she talks about how during slavery, many people were institutionalized into prisons. Now we look at Michelle Alexander's book entitled The New Jim Crow, where we still have these millions of people who are in prison, 2 million strong, and mostly are disproportionately African American and other minorities. So how do we look at sentencing within our institution of the law to say that some people who might have a very limited amount of something that is indeed illegal, but are placed in prison for a long period of time, and when they get out, are stigmatized by that, maybe when they were teenagers, of having 3 pieces of crack cocaine or some marijuana, and then presently stand in and then can't get out and have their voting rights again, cannot get equal access to job opportunities, so therefore will have a recidivism rate of re-entering prison because of trying to make ends meet within the system that has gone forth.
What impact does this have on the ability of Africans to vote, to get out and participate in the suffrage? And during the last few minutes that we have here, let's make some statements in reference to how this might be overcome if we were to become more involved in voting and the suffrage and et cetera. Make some statements in reference to that.
Well, thank you so much. And I would like to say here in the Davidson County part of Tennessee with that Michelle Alexander's book, there's been a group of us that's been meeting, and we've talked about this issue on when many get out, they do not have that right to vote again. And that's been very impactful. They are indeed citizens of the United States, the Constitution, but they lose that as they've gone in. And so many judges and lawyers that even attended these sessions felt that they needed to be changed. But given the present legislation under those particular laws right now, they are kind of forced, although they might morally feel that it's wrong, are forced to look at those guidelines and then act accordingly. So this has really been detrimental. But I would like to say, out of those that are actually have the right to vote, we need to go out and then exercise that right and go out to the polls, because you got so many. I think we talked about a statistic earlier, out of percentage of people in a particular county, only a very small percentage, maybe 6%, are actually utilizing their vote, while those, as you may very well know, during the civil rights movement or prior to that, out of slavery, out of the Civil War, fought very hard to have the right to go and have a vote. And now people will not exercise that right. So we need to have a strong push to go out and not be so caught up into this false sense of fairness, that everything is going to be righteous for people. That's that illusion of inclusion that we're trying to bring it back to as we're closing, to think that we have to go out and exercise that right to vote, but also understand those other institutionalized things that we have to make sure that we are part of the process too. Taking advantage of education, taking advantage of economic opportunity, workshops, those types of things to improve the society in which we're living in.
And so in a real sense, there's an opportunity that we still have to make things better and make these illusions real, a reality of the illusions that we have. And so we think that the best way to do that is through political participation. That's sort of a mass kind of thing that you can get a large number of individuals involved in, and you can see almost immediate results simply because those who participate in the suffrage are such a small number that the only thing that it would take is for us to have some kind of commitment and get a large number of folks involved, and that we might be able to change some of the things that you're suggesting. Is that what we're saying here?
That's exactly what we're saying, but I think even more so how complex it is, because people have this sense that everything is okay. That's why I won't go out and do it. While when we were growing up and others of your viewers were growing up, when we didn't have that opportunity, we felt a sense of need. We had this collective consciousness about trying to overcome. Now people feel that they have already overcome and everything is just fine. So some type of way, there's this push that's strongly needed to get people very much involved again with their kids as they are growing up, to understand that race is still fundamentally a part of social structure, although we've come up with different categories of other. Politically, that other can take away from some of the rights and privileges that females would have as well as others would have. And I would like to be able to say as well, and as we look back on this, sometimes they can get a sense that we're always bringing this issue up centered around race and those types of things, but it's really improved the society in which we live in. Let's look at it very concretely. President Lyndon Baines Johnson helped out with the Civil Rights Act that made it open and free for everybody to have some type of opportunity. President Obama has done an excellent job, and we have to also think that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was very fundamental in that civil rights movement, those that were involved, and the unsung heroes and sheroes that were participants in it to bring about change in our community here, as well as throughout the United States, as well as the world. Even with females that have these opportunities, sometimes we take for granted that they have opportunity to participate in sports. That came out of the civil rights movement with Title IX. No one at places just gave that right to them. People had to fight for them. And so this is very fundamental. But it goes back to how we have to still realize that we have to understand those rights and work, because race is still prevalent.
Final statement. Do you think that change would be good for America?
Absolutely. Change is good, and it's happened. It just has to continue to happen.
Very good. And of course, let me thank you for giving us that excellent information. And let me encourage you to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.